Before we wrap things up, let's turn the spotlight over to Kintex, where the main press center is located, for a trio of our Arirang reporters hard at work.
We believe our Kim Min-ji is joined by two other reporters covering the event. The Hwang Ho-jun, who is also a correspondent of the top office, and our Oh Jung-hee covering the unification ministry. Min-ji, take things away.
That's right. We're back here at the main press center in Kintex, and we're about an hour's drive away from the Panmunjom, where the inter-Korean talks are underway at the Peace House. Now, as we heard, the second part of the inter-Korean summit is underway. During the morning session, the talks lasted about 100 minutes, where the two sides discussed all three agendas: denuclearization, setting peace on the peninsula, and bettering inter-Korean ties. Now, the two sides will be working on a joint statement and are expected to give a joint press conference later on. And we heard earlier from our team at Torasan that North Korea leader's wife Lee Seol-ju will be arriving at Panmunjom as well later in the evening to join the feast. Now, for a more in-depth look into the bits and pieces of the summit, joining us in the studio live are two of Arirang's very own reporters, Hwang Ho-jun, our Cheong Wa Dae correspondent, and Oh Jung-hee, our unification ministry correspondent. Thanks for joining us.
Good
Great to be here.
Now, going back to this morning, it was definitely a historic moment. Heading in, there was so much anticipation and some nerves, no doubt. It was the first inter-Korean summit to be held between the two leaders on the South Korean side, with the two leaders having their first encounter at the military demarcation line. Now, what were some things that caught your eyes?
Well, I want to begin with the very first scene we saw of the truce village of Panmunjom. It was about, 9:15 when the live stream of the Panmunjom began. That's 15 minutes before the actual encounter between the leaders of Seoul and Pyongyang took place. And what we saw was North Korean workers working at the Panmunjom building. They were actually, pulling the curtains to the sides to peek out the window. And that's a very unusual thing to see from North Korean people, because their behavior, whatever they do, are under very much strict control by the North Korean regime. So North Korean people showing that sort of behavior was quite much of a surprise. And that's also the part where we could see that North Korean citizens are also anticipating the first inter-Korean summit in over a decade, as much as we South Korean citizens were anticipating.
Absolutely. And so with that, what took so many by surprise was actually when Kim Jong-un arrived and crossed the demarcation line and was greeted by President Moon. And it's really interesting because later on, Yoon Young-chan, the presidential press secretary, he actually told, President Moon said to Kim Jong-un, "Oh, I wonder when I would be able to go to North Korea." And Kim Jong-un actually said, "Well, how about now?" And that's how the whole surprise of crossing the demarcation line towards the North Korea side for a very brief moment, that stunt happened. And of course, it just blew all of us away. It's very interesting in the fact that we actually kind of see that kind of friendly behavior, very positive body language from both leaders as well. And it was definitely an unscripted stunt. And another interesting thing that we really should kind of focus on is how the two leaders were walking towards the Peace House on the red carpet and surrounded by the honor guard, and they actually did a full inspection of the honor guard before actually entering the building. And now that is a diplomatic protocol that the South Korean government does for foreign leaders making a state visit, meaning that President Moon is actually acknowledging Kim Jong-un as his counterpart.
Right, that's where I want to add a comment. They're all part of efforts to position Kim Jong-un. Like, it's Kim Jong-un's efforts to position himself as a normal leader of a normal state. And that actually began when he decided to cross the inter-Korean border to attend the summit meeting in the South Korean side of the truce village of Panmunjom. Well, to give you an idea, the past two summits have been held in Pyongyang, and that's because the previous leader, Kim Jong-il, was very much worried about crossing the inter-Korean border because of security reasons. But, maybe because Kim Jong-un has some experiences of living overseas. Maybe that's the reason why he is seen as a bolder and more daring leader than previous leaders of North Korean regime.
Yeah, so it was sure a scene to watch. Like, everybody at the press center, including yourselves, were overwhelmed. We saw reporters cheering and wooing as the two Koreas, as the leaders of the two Koreas shook their hands when they met at the border. Tell us more about the general response of the media.
Oh, wow. So just to kind of give you a personal story for me, like the first Inter-Korean Summit that happened in 2000, I was in 5th grade in elementary school. The second one, I was a senior in high school, and now I'm actually covering this actually in person as a reporter. And so, and as you said, this is like the first time a North Korean leader to step on South Korean soil in over 60 years since the Korean War. So it is a big deal, and that's why the whole press center, which was filled with at least 3,000 reporters from all around the world, like they were cheering, they were excited, and even when Kim Jong-un first emerged from the Panmunjom building, everybody was not exactly shy of just, expressing their excitement. Yes. They weren't.
That's right. Turning to the summit itself, we know that North Korea has a 9-member delegation and South Korea a 7-member delegation. Jong-hee, can you give us some details, or Ho-jun yourself, about the participants and what impact this could have on the direction of the talks?
Absolutely. So, with President Moon Jae-in is sitting Seo-hun, the head of the National Intelligence Service. Now, he was the one who actually visited Pyongyang and Washington with the nation's top security advisor, Jong-un, and practically started all this phenomenon. He actually got the agreement from the North that, yes, we are willing to have a dialogue with the South Korean president. So that was a very big deal, and absolutely from then on, the two traveled to Washington, to Beijing, to Tokyo, sharing the results of their meeting with the North Korean leader. And then the other person would be Im Jong-seok, the presidential chief of staff, who was the head of the Inter-Korean Summit for today. And it's important because he was the mastermind behind everything, how the day is going to go on, what the press center is going to look like. So, a very big deal indeed.
Right. So it was So it was actually 9-member delegation for the North Korean side, 7-member delegation for South Korean side, but it was actually 3-to-3 meeting for the actual summit talks. And on the North Korean side, accompanying Kim Jong-un was first of all Kim Yo-jong, and she is the real Kim Jong-un's sister. And she is also at the same time the most trusted political aide. And she was sent to South Korea as a special envoy with the regime's ceremonial leader Kim Yong-nam in February for Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. And there she offered invitation to President Moon Jae-in to visit Pyongyang, and that was on behalf of her brother Kim Jong-un. And also the other one we're talking about is actually Kim Yong-chul, and he's the North's key figure who was the direct counterpart for Seo-hun, who is the National Intelligence Service chief. So they actually, they were on the under-the-water contact with the U.S. intelligence officials. So they are the direct counterparts who've been organizing the relay summits between Washington and Pyongyang, and also the Inter-Korean Summit we're talking about now. And Kim Yong-chul is actually a key aide to Kim Jong-un as well. And we could see that when Kim Jong-un walked out of the Panmunjom building, and Kim Yong-chul was the one that's standing right next to Kim Jong-un.
Now, staying with you, Jong-hee, we heard the opening remarks from the two leaders, and staying with looking at Kim Jong-un, North Korean leader, he said that he had been looking forward to this historic meeting. How did you see his remarks? Were there any attempts to break the ice?
Well, of course there were, and the thing we found, the reporters in the press room, we found that Kim Jong-un actually has, a sense of humor that was much bigger than we expected. Right, he was trying to break the ice. He first of all mentioned the cold noodles. He was like, oh, I brought these noodles from Pyongyang. It's a faraway city. Oh, maybe not. Maybe it's not far away. So he wished that South Koreans could enjoy Pyongyang noodles, but at the same time, he emphasized that Pyongyang is not at all a faraway city. And at the same time, he said, oh, well, it must have become a habit for you to wake up early in the dawn to attend National Security Council meetings. For you, President Moon Jae-in, and that's actually a very scary joke. But at the same time, he's like, oh, well, I know what I did last year, but, we're here to sort things out. That was, those kind of attempts by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is actually what broke the ice between the North and South Korean side.
Yes, so soft talk there, and we do expect a little bit more soft talking when the two leaders have a walk later on in the afternoon. Now, we know that the two sides had lunch separately, though.
Right.
The southern side is known to have wanted to eat them together. But do you think the separate lunch was intentional on North Korea's part to give it more time to coordinate on the issues that were discussed or to be discussed in the afternoon?
Absolutely. So what we know so far that the summit meeting was actually divvied out to two sessions, one before lunch and one is going to happen or is happening soon after lunch. And basically, before lunch, what will be going on is the two leaders and the officials will be sharing their thoughts on the agenda or whatever will be on the table, either denuclearization, establishing lasting peace on the peninsula, or even de-escalating military tension. And these are all like very hard subjects to actually talk about. Both of them have their own perspective on these issues. Now, we know in the afternoon that they will have to convene again, and they will have to fine-tune the details to come up with a statement of agreement. And in order to do that, they would definitely need to have a buffer to kind of go to their own sides and then kind of discuss like, okay, what are we going to do about this issue or that? And also, I mean, they're also going to be together for the entire rest of the day. So, and every relationship needs some breathing room.
So much anticipation will be on what comes out of the meeting eventually when they hold their joint press conference. Now, President Moon Jae-in has long been an advocate of talks with North Korea. What will he be striving to achieve at the end of the day?
Well, you know, we've got three big agendas, but setting them aside, what President Moon Jae-in actually hopes for is to regularize the summit talks. Back in 2007, he was actually the head of the summit preparation committee for the summit talks then held between President Roh Moo-hyun and Kim Jong-il. And at that time, he actually wanted to regularize the summit talks, but the South Korean side offered that the summit talks be held in South Korea, North Korea, like alternate the places. But then North Korean side was very much concerned about coming to the South because of security reasons, and that's why the talks couldn't be regularized. So maybe this time, if we decide to hold the summit talks at Panmunjom, you know, there is a possibility that the meetings could be held regularly.
And another thing that President Moon absolutely wanted to do was that he wants the inter-Korean agreement, whatever might come out, to be ratified by the National Assembly. Now,
That's right.
Of course, the reason why he wants to do that, he wants to make sure that the agreement would not be changed by any change of administration. And you can imagine it's not going to be exactly easy. It might actually bring upon some political maelstrom here in Korea because, of course, the opposition party is the majority right now. But also it means that South Korea must acknowledge North Korea as an official country. Now, the Constitution of South Korea, under Article 3, it states that South Korean territory encompasses the entire Korean peninsula, meaning, according to the Constitution, it doesn't really recognize North Korea as a country. So that's going to be an issue for sure.
Well, we'd love to hear more from you guys, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. Most of us here in South Korea are hoping that the two Koreas are able to make the best of the day they have together and that they close the summit with fruitful outcomes. Now, this is all from us at the Main Press Center.